Hey everybody, this video is being recorded in advance, which is why if you're looking at this and one of my other vlogs and you're thinking, hey Sarah, why are you wearing the same clothes, same makeup and same hair? That's why. It's the magic of the internet. This video is really just me. I wanted to speak about my MS diagnosis, what were my symptoms through to, you know, what process did I go through to get diagnosed, and then finally my actual diagnosis. So people I know are curious as to, you know, how did you get diagnosed with MS, and this is my story. My story begins in March 2016. Around the time of my birthday, I noticed that I was starting to lose feeling in my toes and in my feet. They were like, I could still kind of feel things, but they felt weird, like I couldn't feel my shoes or my socks properly, and if I wiggled my toes I knew I was wiggling them, but I couldn't really feel that I was wiggling them, if that makes sense. And at first I thought maybe it was just my chair and work, so I didn't think anything of it. Around Easter, my birthday wasn't too, like, I think my birthday was like a week or two before Easter. So around Easter, for Holy Thursday Mass, I went to church and down to St. Nicholas's, our local church, and I was involved in the Holy Thursday Mass, and things like I couldn't really tell where my jeans were lying on my hips or on my waist, and I was worried that maybe they were going to slip down, because I had to bend down and pick things up and put them up on the altar while I was dressing it and things like that during the Mass. So that was kind of strange. And then on Easter Sunday we went to Mass, and when I was sitting on the pew I couldn't really feel the pew. It felt like I was sitting on a balloon. My nephew was down, I was bouncing him on my knee, and I couldn't feel him hitting my leg. And I kind of noticed that it was really everything from the waist down. I couldn't feel anything. I could move everything fine, there was no problem, like physically. It was all just the feeling. So I thought it was my chair and work, and I adjusted it, and it didn't make any difference. So in April I went to my doctor. So I went out to my own GP, and my GP, he didn't think, you know, it was anything too serious, maybe a trapped nerve or something. I told him that when I lay down at night time and I put the blanket over my feet, that it kind of, I felt like a stinging sensation. So he gave me a prescription of anti-inflammatory medication and told me to keep an eye on it. So I did over the next week. Nothing improved, so I went back, and another doctor in the same office of my GP said, you know, it is probably a trapped nerve, which we'll need to get physiotherapy on. So this was on April 12th. 2016, I went to the Accident and Emergency Department in University Hospital Waterford, Archie, whichever you want to call it. So I went in, it was like, I think 2 o'clock in the afternoon or something like that. It was just after lunch, or just around lunchtime, and I saw the orthopedic doctors that were, firstly obviously I saw a triage nurse, and then I saw the orthopedic doctors. So I saw I saw a nurse and 2 doctors, or no, 2 nurses and 2 doctors, and they all thought, you know, this is an orthopedic thing, like a trapped nerve. My own doctor told me to ask for an MRI. She wrote a letter and said get an MRI. So they said we're gonna do an x-ray. So that day I went down to the x-ray department, and they did an x-ray on my lower back, and they did some blood tests, and then they decided to keep me in the hospital overnight because I would need an MRI, and they'd scheduled that for the next day. That night at about 11 p.m. I found out that I was staying in the hospital, so they decided to do another x-ray. Since it was quieter at that time, I went down and had an x-ray on my neck, and another blood test, because obviously they have to take your blood if you're staying in hospital. And then I went up to my room, so I was put in a room. When I woke up, that was on a Wednesday. When I woke up on the Thursday morning, I was just kind of relaxing in the hospital, wasn't really doing much, waiting for my MRI, and I met with a neurologist. I had no idea what was happening at this stage, but they had kind of decided it wasn't an orthopedic thing because they couldn't see anything in the x-rays. So this neurologist was going to come and say, I'm going to have an MRI done on your back, and that way we can see is there anything strange going on a neurological side. So he scheduled me for an MRI on the Friday. So on the Friday morning, probably all time kind of melds together when you're in a hospital, so it was before lunch. I went down and I had an MRI on my lower back. So on my lower spine's like, I guess kind of halfway up my spine. They didn't do my neck or head, they just did my lower back. And when the neurologist came up to see me that afternoon, he said, we're going to keep you for the weekend because there is a scar on your spine. Now, we don't know what the scar is, so we're going to have to do a lumbar puncture, or a spinal tap as it's also called. So he scheduled me for that for the Monday morning. Monday came and he decided he wanted to do another MRI on my neck and brain, because that way he'd get a full picture of my nervous system, my spinal column nervous system, from my brain right down to my lower back, which he'd already done. And on that they found another scar on my brain. Very little scarring, he said, so no alarm bells were really going off with him, because he thought, you know, this isn't a normal case that you would get for multiple sclerosis. Normally with MS, there would be a lot of scarring on the brain and on the spine. So on the Tuesday I had a lumbar puncture. The doctor that attempted to do it first ran into a bit of a problem. He put in the needle and he hit the bone in my back, which is fine because like it's a tiny space. So he took out the needle, he went back in, and he must have brushed off a nerve, because I felt everything freezing up as if I couldn't move. So he removed the needle, put a plaster on my back and lay me down, and he said, look, we'll try again later. So later on I went in, they did this at my bed, so later on I actually went into the theatre and they did it, and it was fine. So I knew I was going home the next day. My parents brought me some McDonald's that night. I was sick of hospital food, and I lay back in the bed and I was to lie down for at least 6 hours. I wasn't allowed to get up or move onto my side or anything. I just had to lay flat on my back, and so I did that, and that was fine. I felt a little pain in my back, but nothing major. They were actually going to leave me home after the 6 hours was up. But after their initial test of the fluid they took from my spine, they found some white blood cells, which can be indicative of meningitis. So they wanted to keep me overnight just to make sure I didn't have meningitis. Another doctor came and just asked me a couple of questions about my reactions to light and things like that. And they did rule out meningitis. But they still kept me overnight. So the next morning, probably like late that night, I felt like I rang the nurse and I was like, can I roll onto my side? Can I go to the toilet? You know, things like that. I had washed my hair before my lumbar puncture and I had it like in a bun, and it was just like annoying me. So she was like, yeah, you can roll over or whatever. It's fine. It's been more than 6 hours. And as the night went on, I could feel the sweat and stuff pooling on my neck, because I was really hot and my hair had been wet and I was just kind of uncomfortable. But I felt fine. I woke up the next morning, I got up, I went in and I showered. I, used the toilet. Came back to my bed, I got dressed because I knew I was going to be going home. Or I think I tried to get dressed, but my back was sore, so my mum helped me get dressed when they arrived because I knew I was going to be going home, and I felt fine. The nurse came to see me, to discharge me. They said everything was perfect. They couldn't see any they couldn't see any problems. I had, for the Saturday, Sunday, Monday and Tuesday, been put on a liquid steroid to help kickstart my nerves again, and the feeling was almost back. I felt good. So my dad was like, you know what, you've had a rough week, why don't we get you some Burger King? So they stopped in Burger King on the way home, and while my dad parked outside the old permanent TSB and walked up to Burger King, and within 5 minutes he was supposed to go to the phone shop to look at something on his phone, and within 5 minutes I was ringing him saying, please come back to the car, I need to go home. I felt terrible. I felt dizzy, my neck was starting to seize up. I tried to eat my food on the car on the way home. By the time I got home, I was like this. I thought maybe it was because this sweat had been pooling on my neck the night before, but it only got worse. And that's normal after a lumbar puncture, because they take like 10 milliliters of spinal fluid to test. So it does mean that your cerebrospinal fluid in your brain is a little bit off. So I ended up being out of work for a couple of weeks with that while I was recovering from the lumbar puncture. Then in July I went down to my neurologist again, and he said to me that they had done all the tests and I either had multiple sclerosis or neuromyelitis optica, which is NMO, which is like a first cousin. They're like related. They have the same symptoms but they have different treatments. And so I had to go and have a further test down in University College Cork. So I went down to University Hospital Cork, and basically it's a dark room and they put these electrodes across your head, and then they put on an old CRT monitor, and it has a checkerboard pattern, and it flicks on and off so that the white squares become black and white vice versa, so they're swapping places. And it happens with the full screen, then happens with half the screen, and it's basically this really like super fast camera is watching your eyes, I think, and these electrodes are watching your brain scans. So that happens in like late July. I went on holidays in August when I went to Washington for a week with Sarah, my friend from work. And then when I came home, I had a note from my doctor to go down and see him, my neurologist, on September 22nd. And on that day, he said to me that they had ruled out the neuromyelitis optica, which meant that all signs indicated that I had multiple sclerosis. Excuse me. So that's my MS diagnosis. I'm very lucky. I think I got the right doctors at the right time. My neurologist, you know, he has been absolutely brilliant in the work that he's done for me and the information that he's passed on to me. I am on a medication for that, and I will talk about that in another video. But the services that I've experienced going to hospital and everything happening so quickly, I mean, I went in April and was diagnosed by September, and I think I'm one of the lucky ones, because that's not always the case for everybody. So I would say to anybody watching this video, if you feel strange, if you feel like there's something wrong with your body, go to the doctor and ask, because the worst thing you can do is not follow up on these things. And I could have left it. I could have been like, no, it's the chair and work, I'll see if they'll get me a different chair, and it never would have fixed my problem. So whatever it is, go to your doctor if you do feel sick or unwell or just not yourself, and hopefully the doctor will say it's nothing, but if you don't go, you'll never know. Thank you very much for watching this video. I'm sorry for being such a Debbie Downer, but I thought it was important to talk about my diagnosis, and thank you really for watching. I'm not going to do my normal sign off because that would seem weird, but I will see everybody again soon. Have a great day, and TTFN.